Hi everyone, I'm Bugby. I'm a sculptor and installation artist and newly based in Bristol. I just recently completed a week-long residency at the island, using their amazing gallery space to test some ideas and some work in progress. This talk forms the culmination of that residency. I'd like to thank the island for supporting me by giving me the use of the space. It's been a very productive experience, and it's really helped to push the work forward in a short space of time. So I'm going to dive straight in and show you the work that I made at the island. I started these pieces in my very small home studio that I had at the time, and then finished them during the residency. So these sculptures are test pieces for an exhibition that I'm doing later this year at the Sevenoaks Kaleidoscope gallery in Kent. The purpose of this residency at the island was really to experiment with sculptural processes, to see what works and what doesn't before committing to a process, and also to see how the sculptures relate to each other in a much bigger space. So to give you all a bit of context about the work, the exhibition I'm working towards is partly based on the time I spent working with archaeologists over the past 2 years. So I was living in Kent when I started this project, and I decided to find out if I could locate a local archaeology team that I could work with and get some hands-on experience in the field. So I was really fortunate to find a great team called DROP, Discovering Roman Otford Project, who are excavating a Roman villa from the 3rd century. I was also able, amazingly, to take home some tesserae and some oyster shells from the dig with me to use in my work, which is what you can see here. The dig is just a few miles from the gallery where I'll be showing the work, so there's a really nice local connection there. The thing that struck me most about the experience of the dig is the way that conclusions are drawn from the minutest details, and that something as tiny as a coin can change the whole landscape of knowledge about a site dramatically. So what you see here are Roman tesserae, which are tiny floor tiles made from fired ceramic. They're really beautiful and tactile objects. They're actually worn smooth on one side from the passage of feet over so many years. I love that you can feel the way that human contact has left its trace on them, and the potential they have to connect us to people hundreds of years ago through touch. Originally, I'd planned to make work focused around this idea of touch, but with COVID restrictions at the moment, it's just not possible, obviously. So I've gone down a different avenue. I was examining these tesserae recently and started getting interested in the irregularities in their forms, and decided to make some large sculptures loosely based on them. So that's where the idea for these forms initially came from. Of course, while experimenting with the work over the week, my ideas also changed quite a bit. Once I'd made them and they actually existed in the world, things got a little more complicated in a good way. Once I'd topped this piece with green fur, it very much became a cross-section, like looking at a slice of earth with grass perched on top. And I like the archaeological aspect of that, referring to contexts or strata. But I also really like the way this piece worked out, which is almost a confusion of this logic, with the fur or grass covering the sides of the form. These sculptures are all made using chicken wire, which is then coated in paper pulp mixed with glue. It's a laborious and time-consuming process, especially as the sculptures take a really long time to dry out. This is the first time I've used these materials and processes on a large scale, and it was a steep learning curve, finding out how they behaved or didn't. I spent a lot of time wielding a hairdryer over the course of the week. These hollows in the surface of the forms are quite important. Some of the alcoves and shelves are organic, quite cave-like, while some are architectural, like entrances or shrines, like this one. When I exhibit the work in June, I will also be running community engagement activities. People will have the opportunity to make small sculptures from cob, an ancient building material. These sculptures will become part of the exhibition, and some of them will be located in these hollows and alcoves, like artefacts or offerings. This is an installation shot of the sculptures in the gallery space at the island. So I've got a few of these beautiful chunks of pink salt, which I brought in and played around with a bit. I've had to go at lighting them, as you can see from that furthest piece, and I'd really love to see them all illuminated. And the way I laid them out in the space seemed to me like standing stones, almost like a stone circle. Now I'm going to go back a little bit and show some of my work that led up to this. This installation is called Breakfasting with Apicius. Apicius is a Roman cookbook from around the 1st century AD with all kinds of weird and wonderful recipes in it. Before looking through it, I had no idea that the Romans ate sausages. I made this piece during the first lockdown while I was still living in Kent and doing a residency at Tunbridge School. So I was really lucky to have a studio space which I could access, even though the school was obviously closed. So I've used a combination of quite strange materials in this piece. The substances you can see on the floor are charcoal and salt. And then this fabric is stained with rust dye, which I make by soaking steel wool in vinegar. The effect is almost like an animal pelt. So these bones and handle forms you see throughout the installation are made from the cob, the material that I talked about earlier, which is a mix of natural clay dug out of the ground with sand and straw. I learned how to make it on a course learning how to build earthships, which are eco-friendly houses made from this material. I was really excited to discover how easy it was to sculpt with too. I really like the idea of making bones and artefacts from stuff which has been dug out of the earth. It seems really fitting. And I also used eggs, real eggs, for the first time in my work too, which was really exciting. These egg yolks have been preserved by salting. I like how jewel-like they are. This is definitely a process I'll return to. I don't feel as though I've explored all its possibilities yet. What you can see here is one of the salted yolks in a bed of salt inside an oyster shell from the archaeological dig. It's very common to find oyster shells in digs like the one at Otford, as they were a staple food in Roman Britain. So this is how you traditionally make the cob, by mixing the clay, sand and straw with your feet. You can make whole buildings from this material in this way. It's pretty amazing. So these are a couple of sculptures I made using the cob, combined with recycled wine bottles. These pieces were made for Tunbridge School as part of my residency. I involved the school community by inviting people to give objects of significance to be encapsulated within the glass. These sculptures are called Xenia 1 and 2. Xenia means hospitality in ancient Greek, and it was a really important principle of society, In Greek mythology, the gods usually punished anyone who violated the rules of Xenia quite harshly. So the idea was that the school community were giving these personal items in the spirit of Xenia to visitors. The use of the wine bottles also ties in nicely with the idea of the hospitable. You can see here there's a lovely poem inside this section, written and donated by one of the teachers. When I made the top of this column, I was thinking of the handles on Greek amphora, which are large storage jars, which often held wine. Now I'm going to very briefly mention some of the experiences that influenced my current work. In 2019, I borrowed a number of real artefacts from local museums. These ones are from the Surrey History Centre in Woking and are all Tudor, apart from the 2 fragments of Roman Samian ware, which are the 2 lovely reddish pieces. I find these objects so captivating because they provide tantalising clues about everyday life hundreds of years ago. They seem like time travellers, containing stories of the people that have used them and the environments they have existed in. The greenish pieces are a typical Tudor glaze, and the smaller things at the bottom are a tiny buckle, coins and a thimble. And some of the bones have cut marks where the meat has been stripped off. I like to imagine for some decadent Tudor feast. In 2018, I was very fortunate to be able to do some travel through Spain, which became a bit of an archaeological pilgrimage really. And this was what began this line of inquiry in my work initially. And this was the final place on that journey, the Roman ruins at Bologna, a really gorgeous place on the southernmost point of Europe. Okay, so I'm going to finish up this talk on this evocative image of a space within the ruins of a fortress called La Motta in Andalusia. So thank you so much to everyone who's watched this video, and thank you again to the island.